Welcome back, book buddies! Today we are going to carry on reading a book from the Mr. Men, Little Miss Advent Calendar. Let's go! Let's open Day 10. Mr. Small's Big Dream. Day 10. Mr. Small's Big Dream. Can you see the lights and hear the music? The fair has come to town. And on this beautiful spring morning, Mr. Small, Little Miss Greedy, Mr. Skinny, and Mr. Busy were on their way to the fair. If you want to see the most amazing things, follow me, cried Mr. Small. There's an animal trainer who gets wild animals to perform tricks right before your very eyes. Incredible. But Mr. Small's friends were much more interested in the bumper cars. Move out of the way, Mr. Small, called out Mr. Busy as he sped past. This isn't for small people like you. Because, of course, Mr. Small is so very small, and the bumper cars are just too big for him. They're too fast, too noisy, and most definitely too big. Poor Mr. Small. Candy floss for sale, came the call, and immediately everyone hurried towards the man with a candy floss cart. Mr. Small got pushed this way and that by the crowd. A large candy floss for me, please, said Little Miss Greedy greedily. Me first. I'm terribly hungry, said Mr. Rush. I'll have a candy floss with 2 sticks so that I can hold it better, said Mr. Clumsy. Please could I have a small candy floss, asked Mr. Small, in his very small voice. But nobody heard him. Poor Mr. Small. A little further along, a man was calling out to the crowd. Roll up, ladies and gentlemen. Is there anyone who dares to challenge the strongest man in the world? He's a marvel, he's a giant. See for yourselves. Roll up, roll up. What are you waiting for, Mr. Busy? Teased Little Miss Greedy. Aren't you going to challenge the strongest man in the world? I'm far too busy, replied Mr. Busy hurriedly. Perhaps we should send Mr. Small. This was, of course, made everyone laugh. Everyone except Mr. Small, who tried to make himself even smaller than usual. Poor Mr. Small. But, much to the relief of Mr. Small, his friends moved away from the strongest man in the world and went into the Hall of Mirrors. Being a fair, the mirrors in the Hall of Mirrors were no ordinary mirrors, of course, as Mr. Skinny soon found out. He's skinny and he's big. And as for Mr. Small, well, he was completely transformed. And as he stared at the enormous reflection, he began to dream about how different life could be if only he wasn't so small. Bumper cars aren't for small people like you, Mr. Busy, he imagined himself saying as he crashed into a very small Mr. Busy. Nobody is too strong for me, he imagined himself saying to the not-so-strongest man in the world. But Little Miss Greedy's voice interrupted his daydream. Mr. Small, don't you want to take us to see the animal trainer? She asked. Oh, yes, replied Mr. Small. 4 tickets, please. I'm sorry, replied the ticket seller, but there's no show today. The animal trainer is injured. I can take his place, replied Mr. Small boldly. I know this show very well. I've seen it many times. There was a drum roll, and Mr. Small stepped onto the stage. Was Mr. Small, who was so very small, really going to stand face to face with a wild animal? Little Miss Greedy, for one, was quite sure that Mr. Small had gone completely stark raving mad. Hop, 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 a frog, a little green frog. Yes, Mr. Small was standing face to face with a wild animal, a small, green, wild animal. The show was a huge success, and Mr. Small was delighted. He had always wanted to be a wild animal trainer. At last his dream had come true. A round of applause for Mr. Small, the greatest frog trainer in the whole world, announced the ticket seller. Hip, hip, hooray! Cried Mr. Small's friends and the rest of the audience. And the last I heard of Mr. Small was that he had plans to open a flea circus. But that's another story. I'd like to read that story about Mr. Small's flea circus. Thank you very much for joining me again today. Do come back so we can read more books together. Please like and subscribe. Bye.